On April 28, 2025, at exactly 12:33 p.m. local time, a sudden and unprecedented power outage struck Spain and Portugal, sending shockwaves across the European energy sector. In just 5 seconds, over 15,000 megawatts of electricity were lost, amounting to roughly 60% of Spain's total power generation. Cities from Madrid to Lisbon plunged into darkness. Metro systems ground to a halt, traffic lights failed, and millions of people were left without internet or cellular networks. The blackout also impacted parts of Andorra and southern France. Interestingly, the Canary Islands and Balearic Islands remained unaffected due to their independent grid systems, a detail that has prompted new discussions about energy decentralization and island-based infrastructure resilience. Preliminary investigations point to a cascade of technical failures within the interconnected European power grid. Experts have traced the origin of the event to instability in the transmission lines connecting Spain with France. Unusual oscillations and a rapid drop in frequency triggered automatic protective systems, isolating the Iberian Peninsula from the rest of the continental grid. Once disconnected, local generators couldn't sustain the load demand, causing a rapid and catastrophic collapse of the electrical infrastructure. Engineers describe the incident as a textbook example of a domino effect. One minor fluctuation led to broader instability, and the entire grid, finely balanced under normal circumstances, crumbled under pressure. The impact on everyday life was immediate and disorienting. In major urban centers, traffic became gridlocked within minutes as signals went dark. Public transport systems, metros, trams, and high-speed trains stopped mid-journey, leaving passengers stranded. Elevators froze between floors in office buildings and residential complexes. Grocery stores and shopping centers had to shut their doors as refrigeration and lighting systems failed. The sudden silence of devices, normally buzzing or blinking, highlighted just how deeply electricity powers even the simplest tasks in modern society. For many, the experience felt dystopian, like a glimpse into a world stripped of its technological comforts and conveniences. Critical infrastructure scrambled to maintain services. Hospitals activated backup generators to keep intensive care units, surgical rooms, and vital equipment running. However, not all clinics were prepared. Some smaller facilities had to evacuate patients or transfer them to larger hospitals. Water treatment plants in parts of central and southern Spain experienced temporary service failures, raising concerns about sanitation and public health. Emergency services were overwhelmed by a flood of calls, many from vulnerable populations left without support systems. Firefighters reported increased incidents of people trapped in elevators, while police forces deployed extra patrols to manage potential looting or panic-related disturbances in urban centers. Industries took a heavy hit. Automotive factories such as Seat in Martorell and Ford's Valencia plant were forced to shut down production lines. Chemical plants near Tarragona engaged emergency protocols to safely halt volatile processes. The financial cost of these interruptions is still being assessed, but early estimates suggest losses in the hundreds of millions of euros. For businesses that rely on just-in-time supply chains, even a few hours of downtime can have cascading effects that stretch for weeks. Logistics companies also suffered, with refrigerated goods stuck in transit and export deadlines missed. Some manufacturing hubs may take days or even weeks to return to full operation. Telecommunications networks were among the hardest hit. As mobile towers lost power, coverage areas shrank rapidly. Internet service providers struggled to maintain signal across the fiber and copper networks. For several hours, much of the Iberian Peninsula was effectively disconnected, not only from each other, but from the world. Broadcast stations switched to emergency loops, and news spread slowly via shortwave radios and local community networks. Many citizens relied on car radios or word of mouth to stay informed. The blackout exposed a critical flaw: digital dependence is deeply rooted, and without electricity, communication becomes fragmented and unreliable. The blackout revealed vulnerabilities in the European energy grid that many had feared but few had experienced on such a scale. While Europe's power infrastructure is among the most advanced in the world, this incident demonstrated how interconnectedness can become a weakness when safeguards fail. It also reignited discussions about the need for energy sovereignty and decentralized renewable systems that can operate independently in times of crisis. Experts are now advocating for increased investment in microgrids, battery storage, and AI-driven monitoring systems capable of detecting early warning signs before cascading failures become irreversible. Politically, the event has already sparked intense debate. Spanish and Portuguese leaders convened within 24 hours for an emergency energy summit. Questions are being raised about the resilience of cross-border energy agreements and the adequacy of backup systems. Some political factions are using the crisis to push for accelerated investment in domestic energy sources, while others caution against hasty reforms that could destabilize existing agreements. There is also growing public pressure for transparency. Citizens want to know how such a large-scale failure could happen and what steps are being taken to prevent future occurrences. The emotional toll of the blackout cannot be underestimated. Stories are emerging of families who spent the night in complete darkness, elderly citizens who were unable to access medical support, and small business owners who lost a day's worth of revenue. In some neighborhoods, residents organized informal support networks, sharing battery-powered lanterns, preparing communal meals, and checking on vulnerable neighbors. While there were no immediate fatalities directly linked to the outage, the psychological stress, particularly in communities already facing economic hardship, has left a lasting impression. For many, the experience served as a harsh reminder of how fragile our modern lives truly are. As investigations continue and recovery efforts unfold, the blackout of April 2025 will likely go down as a defining moment in the history of Iberian infrastructure. It has exposed weaknesses, triggered reforms, and awakened millions to the reality of energy vulnerability in the 21st century. The road ahead will involve not only rebuilding systems, but also rebuilding trust. People want reassurance that the lights will stay on tomorrow, and that the institutions meant to protect them are doing everything in their power to ensure it. The Iberian blackout may be over, but its consequences are just beginning to unfold. In the days following the blackout, communities across Spain and Portugal began sharing their personal experiences, painting a human tapestry that statistics alone cannot convey. In Seville, a family of 4 spent the night in their living room by candlelight, telling stories to their children who were both scared and confused. Their mother, Maria, said it was the first time in years they had spent a night without screens or distractions. "We were scared, yes, but somehow closer," she told a local radio station. Across the country, similar sentiments echoed. People rediscovered the simplicity of conversation, the warmth of shared silence, and the importance of preparedness. However, this human resilience was tested heavily in rural areas where access to emergency services is already limited. In the mountainous regions of northern Portugal, elderly residents dependent on electrically powered medical devices like oxygen concentrators were especially vulnerable. Volunteer firefighters and local councils mobilized quickly to deliver portable generators and supplies to these communities. For some, help came in time. For others, the fear and anxiety of being left alone in darkness created a lingering sense of abandonment. Social workers are now reporting a spike in emotional distress, particularly among the elderly and chronically ill, who felt invisible during the crisis. Meanwhile, local governments found themselves unprepared to address such a large-scale event. In Barcelona, city officials admitted that their contingency plans had not accounted for a complete system failure. Emergency hotlines were flooded, and backup power systems in municipal buildings failed under the strain. In Lisbon, the mayor held a public briefing by candlelight, urging calm and assuring residents that the grid would be gradually restored. While many praised the transparency, critics pointed to years of underinvestment in grid security and modernization. The blackout has now become a flashpoint for wider political debates about infrastructure spending and climate resilience. Children were among those most affected by the blackout in unexpected ways. With schools closed due to lack of electricity and internet, many students missed critical exams, especially those in their final year of secondary education. Parents expressed concern over academic disruption and called for emergency adjustments in grading and testing. For younger children, the event was both frightening and strangely novel. Some likened it to being in a real-life adventure movie, while others struggled with the sudden absence of routine and stability. Educators are now working with psychologists to understand and mitigate the short and long-term emotional impact on the younger generation. Small businesses also bore the brunt of the shutdown. In central Madrid, Marta, a cafe owner, lost an entire day's income and had to throw away dozens of kilos of spoiled produce. "It's not just the money," she said, wiping down her counter the next morning. "It's the uncertainty. We don't know if this will happen again tomorrow." Her story is not unique. From butchers in Porto to florists in Valencia, small business owners across the Iberian Peninsula are now calling for a national relief fund to compensate for losses and to help them install emergency backup systems that can endure future crises. Religious institutions played a surprising role during the blackout. In several towns, churches and mosques opened their doors to anyone in need of a safe, warm place. Volunteers provided food, blankets, and company. In Granada, the local cathedral became a hub of activity, with priests organizing evening gatherings under candlelight to offer prayers and emotional support. It was a powerful reminder of how spiritual and communal spaces can serve as sanctuaries, not just in faith, but in crisis. Religious leaders are now advocating for a more active role in emergency planning, highlighting their position as trusted, accessible resources within the community. One of the more curious outcomes of the blackout was the revival of analog habits. Bookstores reported a sudden spike in interest in printed materials after the power returned, as many found solace in reading by flashlight or candle during the outage. Families dusted off board games, and some even wrote letters to pass the time. "It reminded me of my childhood in the 70s, said Jose, a retired teacher in Zaragoza. "Before everything needed charging, we found joy in much simpler things." Sociologists are now studying these behavioral shifts, exploring whether the blackout has planted seeds of long-term cultural change in how people interact with technology and with each other. In hospitals, the stress continued even after the power came back. Medical staff are now speaking out about how close they came to critical system failures. At a hospital in Malaga, a generator failed for nearly 20 minutes before technicians managed to reboot it. During that time, nurses had to manually ventilate patients and monitor vitals by flashlight. "It was terrifying," said Lucia, a nurse with 14 years of experience. "We train for emergencies, but we never really think we'll be left with nothing." Her story, and those of countless other healthcare workers, has ignited calls for a national review of medical infrastructure, especially in the context of an aging population increasingly reliant on high-tech care. Amid all this, the energy companies are under fire. Major grid operators have launched internal reviews, and the Spanish and Portuguese governments have announced joint parliamentary inquiries to determine whether negligence or outdated protocols played a role in the failure. Executives have appeared in public hearings, assuring the public that lessons will be learned and improvements will be made. Still, trust has been shaken. Protesters in Madrid and Porto have taken to the streets demanding greater transparency, accountability, and investment in renewable, localized energy solutions that don't rely as heavily on fragile interconnections with other nations. While the technical aspects of the blackout are slowly being pieced together by engineers and energy analysts, the human side of the story continues to unfold in cafes, schools, hospitals, and homes. People are beginning to ask broader questions. How did we get so vulnerable? What changes do we need to make, not just in our systems, but in our lifestyles? What role should communities, local governments, and individuals play in creating a more resilient society? The answers are not yet clear, but what is certain is that the blackout has become a mirror, reflecting not only our infrastructure's flaws but also our capacity for solidarity, adaptation, and reflection. In the aftermath of the blackout, one of the most profound reflections has been on how dependent modern society is on continuous energy supply and how vulnerable that dependence makes us. Families, businesses, and institutions alike are reconsidering what normal means in an age where the flick of a switch no longer guarantees light or comfort. The blackout forced many to confront the fragility behind everyday conveniences, from heating and cooling homes to powering devices that connect us to the world. This collective awakening has sparked grassroots movements advocating for energy conservation, emergency preparedness, and greater community self-reliance. At the neighborhood level, new networks of mutual aid began forming almost immediately. In Barcelona's El Raval district, for example, neighbors pooled resources to distribute battery-powered lamps, share food supplies, and check on elderly residents living alone. Social media platforms, though limited during the blackout, became crucial once connectivity was restored, helping to coordinate efforts and share information. These spontaneous acts of solidarity showed how, even in moments of crisis, social bonds can strengthen rather than fray. Psychologists note that such community engagement is a powerful antidote to the isolation and anxiety that power outages often exacerbate. On the governmental side, emergency management agencies are conducting detailed after-action reviews to assess what went wrong and right. While criticism has been harsh regarding outdated infrastructure and lack of redundancy, officials also highlight the successful deployment of emergency protocols that prevented a worse humanitarian outcome. The rapid mobilization of rescue teams, the coordinated use of backup generators in critical facilities, and the widespread cooperation between Spanish and Portuguese authorities are being cited as examples of operational resilience. Still, the scale of the outage has underscored the urgent need for greater investment in grid modernization and renewable energy integration. Energy experts emphasize that this blackout is a stark reminder of the limits of centralized power grids, especially in an era of increasing climate variability. The Iberian Peninsula, with its mix of solar, wind, hydroelectric, and fossil fuel generation, faces complex challenges balancing supply and demand. The incident revealed the dangers of over-reliance on cross-border interconnections without sufficient local backup. In response, governments are considering accelerating projects for smart grids, energy storage solutions, and microgrid systems that can isolate and sustain parts of the network independently during failures. These technological shifts could transform how energy resilience is conceptualized and operationalized. Meanwhile, the psychological impact of the blackout continues to surface in unexpected ways. Mental health professionals report a rise in cases related to anxiety, sleep disturbances, and post-traumatic stress symptoms, especially among populations who endured long hours or nights without power. For many, the experience triggered deep-seated fears about future crises, whether natural disasters, cyber attacks, or infrastructural failures. Community support programs are now expanding to include mental health services, recognizing that recovery is as much emotional as it is physical and logistical. In the business world, the blackout has become a catalyst for reassessment and innovation. Corporations are reviewing their risk management strategies, investing in backup power supplies, and exploring ways to reduce energy consumption during peak demand periods. The event also sparked interest in distributed energy resources, such as rooftop solar panels combined with battery storage, which could offer more autonomy and reduce vulnerability. Some companies are partnering with tech startups to develop AI-driven systems for predictive maintenance and rapid fault detection, aiming to prevent future disruptions before they cascade. The media's role during and after the blackout has been crucial yet challenging. With traditional broadcast infrastructure impaired, journalists turned to unconventional methods to gather and disseminate information, including citizen reports and low-tech communication means. Coverage focused not only on technical explanations and official statements but also on human stories, highlighting resilience, hardship, and solidarity. This approach helped keep the public informed while building empathy and understanding. Going forward, media outlets are exploring ways to better prepare for covering infrastructure crises and to support public awareness campaigns on emergency readiness. At the international level, the blackout has prompted discussions about energy policy and cooperation across Europe. The European Union's Energy Commissioner called the event a wake-up call to strengthen grid security and accelerate the green transition. There is growing recognition that energy systems must be both interconnected and decentralized, able to share resources while maintaining local autonomy. Cross-border collaboration on infrastructure, data sharing, and emergency response protocols is being intensified. Yet, the challenge remains balancing integration with resilience in a landscape marked by geopolitical tensions and diverse national interests. Environmental groups have seized the moment to argue that the blackout is a symptom of broader systemic challenges posed by climate change and outdated energy models. They advocate for a rapid shift towards clean, renewable energy sources paired with demand-side management and community-based solutions. Many see the crisis as an opportunity to rethink energy consumption patterns and to embed sustainability more deeply in public policy. Activists are pushing for increased public participation in energy decision-making, stressing that resilience must be built from the ground up, not just through high-tech fixes imposed from above. Finally, the human stories continue to unfold, reminding us that behind every statistic is a lived experience of uncertainty, loss, hope, and adaptation. Families rebuilding routines, workers returning to factories, patients recovering in hospitals, and communities finding strength in solidarity, all these narratives form the living fabric of recovery. The blackout, while devastating, has also revealed a remarkable capacity for resilience and renewal. Yet, as the sun rises on a slowly recovering Iberian peninsula, the question remains, what lessons will truly be learned, and how will they shape the future of energy, society, and human connection in this fragile but determined corner of the world? In the weeks that followed, energy companies, government agencies, and independent experts collaborated closely to implement immediate fixes aimed at preventing a recurrence of such a catastrophic blackout. Grid infrastructure was reinforced, with emergency redundancies prioritized in vulnerable transmission corridors. Rapid deployment teams were established, equipped to respond to anomalies before they could cascade. Although these measures brought reassurance to many, the process underscored the complexity of maintaining a sprawling, interconnected energy network that balances efficiency with resilience. Public discourse evolved from shock and frustration to a more reflective examination of how societies depend on power. Universities and think tanks organized forums and workshops inviting citizens to discuss energy consumption habits, the ethics of resource allocation, and community preparedness. These discussions revealed a growing appetite for transparency and participation in energy governance, a shift toward democratizing a sector long perceived as distant and technical. For many, the blackout sparked not just fear but a desire to reclaim agency in shaping their collective future. Innovations in energy technology gained renewed momentum. Pilot programs for decentralized microgrids, combining solar panels, wind turbines, and battery storage, took off in regions hardest hit by the blackout. In rural Andalusia, a community-led project now powers over 100 homes independently, serving as a model of resilience and sustainability. At the same time, large-scale utilities accelerated investments in smart grid technology capable of isolating faults and rerouting power dynamically. These developments offered hope that the lessons learned would translate into tangible progress. The human cost of the blackout remained a poignant reminder of the stakes involved. Social service organizations expanded outreach programs to support those most affected, especially the elderly, disabled, and economically vulnerable. Psychological support initiatives grew in importance, addressing trauma linked to the crisis. Personal stories of loss and recovery were shared widely, fostering empathy and community bonds that transcended political and regional divides. These narratives helped reframe the blackout as a shared human experience rather than merely a technical failure. On the political stage, the blackout spurred new legislation aimed at improving energy security and climate resilience. Lawmakers passed bills to mandate stronger safety protocols, increase funding for renewable energy projects, and enhance cross-border cooperation. Parliamentary inquiries yielded recommendations for accountability and transparency, holding energy providers to higher standards. While some criticized the pace of reform, most agreed that the crisis marked a turning point, one that could reshape Iberia's energy landscape for generations to come. Internationally, the event served as a cautionary tale for other countries dependent on interconnected grids. Energy ministers from across Europe convened to discuss best practices, sharing data and strategies to fortify continental networks. Collaborative initiatives were launched to develop early warning systems powered by artificial intelligence and to coordinate rapid response teams. The Iberian blackout thus became a catalyst for a broader continental effort to enhance energy resilience in the face of climate change, cyber threats, and evolving demand patterns. In the corporate sector, the blackout prompted a reassessment of corporate responsibility and risk management. Companies invested heavily in backup systems and continuity planning, while also exploring more sustainable energy sources to reduce environmental impact. Consumer demand for green products and services grew, reflecting a broader societal shift towards sustainability. Businesses began to see energy resilience not just as a cost, but as a competitive advantage and a core component of long-term viability. Educational institutions played a vital role in shaping future responses. Engineering and public policy programs integrated lessons from the blackout into curricula, emphasizing interdisciplinary approaches to energy challenges. Students engaged in real-world problem-solving, developing innovative solutions to grid vulnerabilities and social impacts. These efforts ensured that the next generation of leaders would be better equipped to navigate the complexities of energy systems in a changing world. As infrastructure was restored and routines normalized, a profound cultural shift was underway. People reported a renewed appreciation for simplicity, community, and environmental stewardship. The blackout had peeled back layers of technological dependency, revealing the human connections beneath. While technology remains central to modern life, the crisis reaffirmed that resilience is as much about people as it is about machines. The story of the Iberian blackout is not one of finality but of transformation, an ongoing journey shaped by lessons hard learned and challenges yet to come. It is a reminder that while progress brings remarkable benefits, it also requires vigilance, adaptability, and compassion. As Spain and Portugal continue rebuilding, their experience offers valuable insights to the world, that in darkness, we find both our greatest vulnerabilities and our deepest strengths. If you want to stay informed with the most recent news on global events and in-depth analyses, don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the bell so you never miss an update. Share this video with others who should be aware of these important issues. Your support helps us bring you the latest developments as they happen. Leave your thoughts in the comments, your voice truly matters.